Thank you all for joining us for the CivicSpark Project Partner Orientation. This is Kif Scheuer, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the Climate Change Program Director at the Local Government Commission, also overall Program Director for CivicSpark. With me today is Kristen Wraith, who's the CivicSpark Project Manager.
Hello, everyone.
And we're going to be tag teaming on this Project Partner Orientation. We wanted to make sure to have this opportunity to talk with you before the start of the service year to clarify any questions, program structure, and make sure we're sort of all aiming in the right same place with CivicSpark. It's not your typical program, but we hope it brings a lot of value to you, and that's why you're partnering with us, and we're really excited for this service here. We have some amazing candidates out there. I know a lot of you are involved in interviewing and hiring, and we've heard great things from folks about the candidate selection process, so that's really exciting. Our orientation is coming up just a couple weeks away now, less than a couple weeks away, so we are furiously working on some final content and final hiring. We fully expect that there may be some remaining hires to be done after the start of orientation, and we'll work with you all to make sure that we make the right choices for candidates, no matter how long it takes us, up until a certain point in December when we can't hire anymore. So with that, why don't I go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a bit of background and move through pretty quickly the content that focuses on what AmeriCorps is and sort of how CivicSpark came to be. We'll talk about what CivicSpark does next, and I'll be turning it over mostly to Kristen at that point. We'll talk briefly about some roles and responsibilities of a project partner. This should all be relatively familiar to you, but it's a great chance to ask some questions. I know I've been sending out some emails with some clarifications and requests for additional information, and it's not always clear exactly how that all fits together and why we ask for this information and what exactly we do with it in a way that actually brings value to you all, because fundamentally that's why we're doing all this, is to bring value to the local government partners and NGOs that we work with on the program. Then we'll talk about the support that we provide to you all for project partners throughout the year, in particular the role of our regional coordinators, who many of you may have been introduced to already, and then we'll talk briefly about some next steps. So with that, I'll dive right into the background. Wanted to just really touch on AmeriCorps. Many of you this may be the first program like this that you've participated in. Some of you have worked with us last year, some of you worked with other programs I was involved with, or other AmeriCorps programs. But it's worth mentioning what AmeriCorps is. It's a national program that was created under the Clinton administration, just celebrated its 21st anniversary this year. And the vision was that community service, people dedicating their time to a cause, could be an effective strategy for change. There's been hundreds of thousands of AmeriCorps members over the years. We are just a drop in the bucket of the whole program portfolio. Currently, there are about 75,000 members serving annually throughout the nation, and I can't even remember what the number is in California. So CivicSpark is part of that tradition. And it encompasses a number of programs, whether it's state and national, VISTA, National Conservation Corps. These are all different fields of AmeriCorps. But the common things for AmeriCorps programs is that they are working with communities on a defined need. And the needs are addressed through that intensive service. There's a range of topic areas they focus on. Some of the more familiar ones are disaster services and education, but there's also work with veterans, environmental stewardship, health, economic opportunities, and that can vary over time. All AmeriCorps programs have three main goals that they subscribe to in this umbrella structure: getting things done, and that's the service we provide to the community need; strengthening communities through a volunteer engagement process; and member development. We're all about cultivating leadership. So a lot of us are working with you on the project scopes for these members and the work that they're going to be doing, and we're talking about how we can use the opportunity to both demonstrate success in the work that you're doing and also cultivate these leaders, because ideally we see them going on into the field of climate protection for the long haul. As a federal program, as any of you have worked with federal programs, you know there's regulations, there's limits and on the things we can and can't do. So we have requirements around hours served, we have prohibited activities around the awarded hours that we're serving. We have rules about non-displacement and non-duplication, and we have policies to handle issues and situations. We'll go over those briefly now. So some of the basic restrictions. We can't allow anybody to be an AmeriCorps member. Most fundamentally, you have to be a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident alien. It's a program that was designed to get Americans to do this work. There are great candidates out there who would love to do this work who are not American citizens, and we can't take them in. You have to be at least 17-year-old. You have to clear a criminal background check, and you can't have dropped out of school in order to serve with our program. For our program, an additional requirement is that you're a college graduate, because we're looking to find people who are transitioning from at least an undergraduate sort of career pipeline into this career pipeline. And again, they have to clear their background checks before they serve. And so we're doing those currently with many of the members that we've been interviewing with. Our background checks include a federal, FBI, and a state check. So we do a live scan for all candidates in California. That's the rolled fingerprints, if any of you are familiar with that. And that checks the FBI database and the California state check. If somebody's coming from out of state, we're doing mostly name checks from their priors. So we also conduct a review of the National Sex Offender Registry database, and obviously any candidates that fail those background checks would not be eligible for service and would be withdrawn. We can't share background check results other than letting you know that members pass. If anybody has any questions, some folks are going to do their own background check, and we want to make sure you do that as quickly as possible if you've made an offer and somebody's accepted, because we'd hate to have somebody really start their service, clear our background check, but fail yours. Sometimes different organizations have different levels of rigidity in what they consider a pass or a fail on a background check. On the hours expectations, members are serving for a period of time. They sign a contract to serve from the start of the program until September 16th, 2016. During that time period, their goal is to reach at least 1,700 hours of service to be eligible for their Siegel Education Award. But they're really supposed to serve full-time for that entire duration. We are working with them to make that really clear during orientation and during the training. And so the anticipation is that they'll be serving roughly 40 hours a week. They participate in both project activities and program activities. For many of you who signed up for full-time embedded fellows, we've talked about 1,300 hours as the project hours. That's because they have other training and service-related activities, and that's sort of what we're giving you for the project specifically. But overall, they'll serve 1,700 plus hours. And ideally, at least 80% of their total workload will be service-related. And I'll talk a little bit about what those types of hours are. So service hours are the prep hours. If you looked at your contract and during the orientation that I've provided to many of you, we talk about having some prep hours when they first come on board. Those are service hours. All the project activity that they're doing, including basic project-related admin that they have to do for us because they're using it to track their project activity, are project service hours. They also are involved with any specific training you might have them get involved in is likely to be considered service work, not professional development, though there's some fuzzy areas there, and you can talk to us about that. Service days, they do 4 service days a year. These are MLK, Cesar Chavez Day, a day during AmeriCorps Week, and I'll go over these on the calendar, and then the Community Resilience Challenge Weekend of Action. These are days when they will be out probably in the field with other AmeriCorps members or with other members of CivicSpark doing service projects. When they do their volunteer engagement activities, these are also service hours. And then they're, if they have other service obligations such as jury duty, or occasionally, AmeriCorps members get a call to help out with disaster relief actions. Training hours are the other kind of hours in these buckets. And these are our orientation and other CivicSpark events, the time spent with the regional coordinator, our staff person, because they're coaching and mentoring them. So training hours are really about professional development. Their check-ins with regional partners if they do so, and then some meetings with project partners when it's not really about their project. So let's say you take them to a city council meeting where they're just observing the proceedings and learning about how things go. They can log those as training hours. So I want to talk a little bit about prohibited activities. It's in all of your service agreements, this list of activities that they're not allowed to do. This is a federally defined list for all AmeriCorps members, and it's in part was designed to create the bipartisan nature of AmeriCorps. So some of the examples that we have, and I'll go through them a little bit more detail, but I wanted to say, if members are found to be participating in hours, recording hours as AmeriCorps members that are prohibited, they can be released for cause. So it's really something we want to avoid. Mostly it's not particularly hard. Things that are examples of prohibited activities are advocacy, engaging in partisan political activities, attempting to influence legislation, providing direct benefits to for-profit labor unions or partisan political organizations. We don't have any say over what folks do in their private lives. So once they're off the clock, they're like any other citizen, like you and me, able to do whatever they want. It's when they're in uniform as an AmeriCorps member that they can't do these things. Now, the one that always comes up or has come up with local governments is this question about attempting to influence legislation or advocacy. So we walk the same line that many local government staff do. We are not elected officials, and staff are not elected officials. And so when preparing a board report, you're providing information, resources, context for the elected officials to make a decision. That is not an attempt to influence legislation. That is not a partisan political activity. When it comes to climate change, in some states that might be advocacy, but here we're just doing the work that is the law of the land in California. And so supporting that through research, communications, marketing, outreach is not attempting to influence legislation or partisan political activity. If you ever have a question about it, please get in touch with your regional coordinator or your area lead. We'll talk about who that is shortly. But just wanted to make that clear because that's the one that gets a little bit questionable. And of course, as good local governments like to be cautious about any risky sort of prohibited activities, better to ask, but I wanted to make it clear that by and large, the kinds of things that we do are not a prohibited activity. This is the full list of prohibited activities, and you can see some of what those look like here. We'll make the slides available, and it's also in your service agreement, so I'm not going to go over all of these, but there are a range of activities that fall into this prohibited space. And again, some of the ones, the only one that we've ever had a question about is this attempting to influence legislation area. The other stuff is really pretty straightforward. But the other thing to say about prohibited activities is we are contracted to do certain services. We have a very wide open scope as a capacity building program to deliver a wide range of project activities. However, it is worth mentioning that things that fall outside our awarded activities are by their nature prohibited. So it's important that in part some of the steps we'll talk about in a minute in terms of getting the data from cities, doing the pre-surveys, that helps us document how we are doing the service work that we were awarded to do. And so it's really important that we have those things and that also we're mindful that AmeriCorps members, CivicSpark members are not just interns to be used for whatever task, but they're there to provide the service of climate capacity building for the partners that we're working with. So we don't want members working on unawarded activities because it wouldn't count towards their goals and our goals. The other piece of that is that there is a non-displacement policy. This was a big deal when AmeriCorps was created. The goal was to not make labor upset that we were subsidizing folks to do staff jobs that would be done by other staff. So in our agreements with you all, we make it clear that these are not for displacement of regular staff positions. And so we're trying to do something that would not be done through the provenance of AmeriCorps service. And so that's another example of sort of prohibited activities. We don't want people filling staffing roles with AmeriCorps members. Any questions come up that so far? Great, okay. Well, feel free to post the questions as we go through. I'm happy to stop, but at this point, we're going to shift over to the role of CivicSpark and away from AmeriCorps more generally into a little bit of background and then some of the nuts and bolts of the program, which many of you will be familiar with, but it's worth kind of laying out here as we talk about the startup for the service year. So in terms of background for CivicSpark, just to give you a little history, oh gosh, almost 4 years ago now, LGC started talking with the governor's office about what kinds of service programs might benefit local governments. This came out of the governor's recognition that, one, they could create governor's initiative AmeriCorps programs that could tackle specific needs. There's a wide variety of topics that they could look at, and they very quickly decided, as this administration is very, very aggressively working on climate change, that they wanted to use this resource to provide support to local governments and communities to address climate change. So we did a planning grant. This was before I was with LGC, and they did 9 regional meetings with a wide range of stakeholders across the state to try and understand what the biggest needs were in California and how a service program like this could be of value. And what came back was there's no one thing that local governments need. There's no one thing that needs to be done at a given point in time. What we need is extra arms, legs, ears, hands to do the stuff that we can't get to, that local governments are trying to do, that they don't have the time or resources or technical support to get to, because there's a serious capacity gap on this topic, whether it's from a lack of knowledge of new tools and resources or just the bandwidth to get out in the community and do the work. So this program was designed to really be a more open-ended asset to address this capacity need in California. From that, we defined through our overall project proposal a theory of change and a logic model. This is kind of the language of AmeriCorps. They love their theories of change. And so what you see is how we described that theory of change for this program, that local governments need the expanded capacity to do this work. And AmeriCorps fellows implementing this project could simultaneously do the work itself, but be by virtue of doing that work and leaving behind the resources, the outcomes, the stakeholder networks, realize that capacity building gain incrementally over time. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, who's going to take this section from here and talk you through more of the details.
Hi, everyone. So as Kif was talking about, we have the service delivery model, and it's really based on these core theory of change components that Kif was just mentioning. So we have these regional teams with our regional coordinators, these really experienced project managers, and then our team of fellows. So we will recruit, place, engage, and really build this capacity over time. And this year, if you have been going through the interview process and have seen the candidates that have been coming through, we've had a really, really stellar class this year. So by bringing these folks in and really integrating them into these local governments and building this work, we can build capacity not only now, but by incorporating volunteers and all the other components as well, but really create long-lasting change at the local level. So the process that we use to get our work done, we have a 4-step intervention process that all projects throughout our regions will be using, and it starts with a gap assessment. So what a gap assessment is these fellows will go in and use standardized assessment instruments to define a couple of key things. The first is capacity building goals tied to the needs. So they'll do this by talking to the staff members, looking at the policies in place, and seeing what the gap is between what currently exists at the local level and where you want to go with your climate change work. From there, they'll be able to define specific research, planning, and implementation projects to conduct that'll really get these goals done. And the third component is volunteer engagement. So we really feel that by incorporating volunteers into the work, you can not only have increased capacity at that time, but over time really start building a community around this work, and that really creates longevity at the local level. And then finally is a plan for transferring knowledge at the close of service, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a second. So this gap assessment is really what's informing the goals of the second step, which is the service project. And the fellows will be working on the service project about 80% of the time during the year. About 20% of their time will be spent on training and other activities, but really the bulk of their work is on the service project. The third piece is in parallel, once this service project is underway, incorporating the volunteers into the work, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. And then finally is transitioning expertise. So at the end of their service year, we really want to make sure that the work that the fellows are doing isn't just sitting on a shelf as a report, but is actually continuing on and being incorporated into the work structure and really building out that capacity for the long run. So this past year, fellows were training the staff members, putting on presentations, and really spreading the word about their work so that it doesn't just sit idle, but actually is continuing on. So looking at some project examples from this past year, really it's a very, very diverse spread of projects. And we can follow up this webinar with additional materials if that is of interest, but really we do projects that not only leverage at the local level in your particular city, but are also leveraging economies of scale and building out regional resilience as well. So you probably have seen a lot of these, and now you are all the people creating the project, so we don't have to spend too much time on this. So again, if you have any questions at any time, just type them in the side. We don't have any questions yet, but I am watching, so feel free to send them along. So the next component we're going to talk a little bit about is project eligibility. So all the projects that we have, well, the participating local governments need to lack one or more of the following capacities. So the first is dedicated full-time sustainability or climate action staff person. Second is a formally adopted climate action plan, and this could be by the City Council or the Board of Supervisors. And then the third piece is specific concrete tracking mechanisms to track progress on climate action. And these final tracking mechanism will vary greatly from community to community, but it's just a way to monitor implementation process, document GHG reduction, or really any wide range of climate indicators. So these, the high-level eligibility piece, and also projects need to have at least 2 beneficiaries. So multiple agencies within the same department can count as separate eligible beneficiaries, and certainly if there are any additional questions on that piece as well, we'd be more than happy to talk about that. And we also have a goal that at least 1/2 of all of our local governments are considered high need. And high need can be met by meeting any 2 of the following criteria. So community unemployment is above the state average for the current recorded year. Community-wide energy use is higher than the previous recorded year. Local government employment is lower than 2007 levels, or the Callan Virus Screen rating is in the top 1/3, so that's a score of 23 or higher. The Local Government Commission is the overall administrator of CivicSpark, and from there we partner with AmeriCorps to hire these regional coordinators, and then the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and that's a really wonderful resource for us just in terms of getting access to a lot of really great environmental thinkers at the state level, and having our CivicSpark fellows get to engage with them and get trainings from them as well. So the CivicSpark staff is broken up into 3 central regions. So you have, well, overall, you have Kif as the program director, myself as the project manager, and then Ting Ting Eo is our program coordinator. And from the regional level, we're broken up into Northern, Central, and Southern California. And in Northern California, Jenny Woods is overseeing all of the projects for Sacramento, the North Coast, and the Sierras. And then in those 3 regions, we have our regional coordinators, Steve, Betsy, and Greg with their fellows. In Central California, we're broken up into 3 regions as well. Our Bay Area is so large that it has gotten to be South and North, and then our Central Valley. And then finally, our Southern California region with Julia Kim is overseeing the Central Coast, Southern California, and Los Angeles. So these area leads, myself, Jenny, and Julia, are responsible for a lot of the high-level interactions with you as the project partners. Any questions that you have can be directed to them. And then also, they will be doing a lot of the interacting with the regional coordinators. So as you meet with the regional coordinators throughout the year, and any questions that you have will be funneled up through one of these 3 main area leads as well. So in terms of who manages CivicSpark, again, as we just mentioned, the Local Government Commission is really, we are the overseer. A lot of our the program operations come through our office. So if you're not familiar with the Local Government Commission, we're a nonprofit with over 34 years of experience, really identifying and championing local governments who really want to be sustainability leaders. And again, we're the overall project manager, and we provide the program infrastructure and the fellow support. And then the Governor's Office of Planning and Research has been playing a really wonderful role as well. And Governor Brown really feels that climate change is a major priority for the state of California. So they've been really involved with the program structure and a lot of the engagement with the fellows throughout the year. And they're also helping CivicSpark to really create the support at the local and regional level through their various initiatives. And then linking these local governments and our fellows to all of the tools that are available at the state goal and linking back in with the state goals as well. And the rest of the team, all of our players, we have the Corporation for National and Community Service. So this is the federal agency that manages all services, including service programs, including AmeriCorps. And then California Volunteers is the body that manages all AmeriCorps programs in California. Our regional coordinators, as I mentioned before, are Encore Fellows. So they will be really wonderful in providing training and support to our fellows throughout the year and really acting as the voice for CivicSpark in the regions that they're serving in. And we also have the CivicSpark alumni who are in these regions who will be meeting with the fellows and really introducing them and just building out that community of support for our fellows. And then the fellows themselves. So the fellows are college educated with relevant experience. A lot of them have worked in sustainability in the past, either in local governments or nonprofits. So they have the experience and they'll be providing the direct on-the-ground support to beneficiaries. And then we have our regional partners. So if you, we'll leave this up for a minute, but these regional partners are really the hub for a lot of our work at the local level. And we work with them throughout the year to provide additional support and training to our fellows and to our partners and our coordinators as well.
We have a question. A real question, not a you guys can't see me question. Jerry from Sustainable Napa asks, I'm interested in working with our local media to do a feature on CivicSpark and our fellow, as well as having our fellow provide a monthly diary for our organization newsletter. Do you have any media outreach toolkit information that we could use so we are consistent with approved key messages? This would make a wonderful local human interest and sustainability story. Jerry, really great idea. We have some examples. We don't have a toolkit. It's something that would be great to have, but we will provide some resources for you, and certainly anybody else on the call. If you want to have some media contact, we can get some great quotes from the sort of state level, from past members, from our staff to support that, and we'll think about trying to put together more of a general toolkit as we go forward. But I love the idea. Another question coming in. Thank you, I will follow up. Oh, got it.
So next year we have the program calendar. We're moving into our fellow orientation now. The official start of the service year was this past Monday. So fellows are available to begin work now prior to orientation, but that's in no way a requirement. For most fellows, the first day of their project activity will be November 9th, so the Monday after orientation. So the gap assessments that we spoke about earlier on, those happen in the first few weeks of service. So November 31st is when gap assessments are completed and submitted. And then from there, fellows are enrolled and really begin their service in December. So moving into 2016, we have 4 service days, which all the fellows will participate in. And from there, we have what we'll talk a little bit more about is this volunteer engagement component and the community resilience challenge. So these are really ways for the fellows to integrate service into their work, into the projects that they're doing. And September 16th is the last day of regular service for the program year, and that's when all of our deliverables need to be shared with the local government office. And then October 14th is the very last day to record hours for some of our fellows who are starting later on an extended contract. These are the holidays for the fellows. So again, you'll see that Martin Luther King Jr. Day, President's Day, Cesar Chavez Day. We have a lot of our service days up there as well. So although these are days that the fellows are given off, a lot of our fellows will be working on service projects on those days in their local communities as well.
And we'll mention, I don't think you quite said this. So we're required to offer fellows these days off, and they are not required to take them off. So if you have some different variation in your scheduling, you can talk with the fellow. It's their choice whether they want these days off, or if your office and organization has a somewhat different schedule, they're free to choose to work on them. On the days that are service days, they will be out of the office with our teams, but you know, they can be somewhat flexible. And I know around the winter holiday, you know, we only have a couple days off. Some of you are going to be closed for a week, and so talking with them about what that might look like, it would be good earlier on. We got a question from Aaron down in Central Coast. If fellows are starting before November 9th, is there anything you've put together as an on-site orientation like time card info, etc.? We haven't yet. We've been planning to deal with it on a bit of a case-by-case basis because folks have not mostly asked for it. But let's talk with you. We definitely need to talk with them about time cards and make sure they've passed their background checks and we have all their paperwork done before they start actually recording hours. So definitely get in touch with Julia for the Central Coast. Kevin Jackson is asking, do the holiday hours count towards their service? No, this is kind of so their total service commitment sort of approximately 1,700 plus hours over 11 months factors in the time off for holidays and also there's personal days. I think they get 10 personal days that they can take throughout the year. And so that is sort of factored into the total workload that they have. They don't record any hours on holidays or personal days. And it's up to them to, however, let us know if they're taking a day off or what their schedule is so we're aware of where they stand.
So now moving into more of the program side, so our performance measures. So the three main pillars that we're looking at in really measuring our performance. The first is capacity building at the local level. So really, this is the getting things done. This is the project work and a lot of what we're doing. And oops, sorry, we had I
touched my screen.
Hold on one second. Sorry about that. We're coming back on.
Yep.
There we go. So strengthening communities and through our volunteerism, and then member development. So really, this is the ongoing professional development of our members, and a lot of this is really built into the trainings that they're going throughout the year. And our capacity building structure, we'll start with really defining what capacity needs exist in these communities. And this is through our pre-assessments that all of you are working on, and those are our initial goals in the baseline. And then our gap assessments that the fellows are working on throughout the year, and that's where they're really refining the goals and outlining the scope of the project that they will be working on. And
oops, sorry, I accidentally rolled forward.
There we go. And then from there as well, really developing and executing these planning, research, and implementation projects where the bulk of the work is going to be happening. And then finally, that transition of knowledge. And some of the ways that we're measuring these components is through time cards. How many hours are they going towards these projects? And then post-assessments as well. Where are we at the end of the project year? And how many of our goals have we achieved? So just putting up our capacity building goals just for you to see. We won't go too deep into this component, but we're really trying to make it so that 85% of our local governments are meeting their goals at the local level. And again, we'll leave them up here, but we can talk more about this later. Our community engagement structure, and now we can go a little bit more into the method of volunteerism that we're working on this year. And we really feel that building volunteer services for communities will really enhance the climate change response at the local level.
Lost the question.
And the Community Resilience Challenge is a program run by Daily Acts, a nonprofit, and this is really the structure that we're going to be using this year to drive our volunteer efforts. And it's just a means of engaging volunteers and connecting volunteers to the local level. And in addition to being a framework and a structure for building resilient communities, it's also an opportunity for the fellows to really build professional development. They're going to be owning this activity and managing it throughout the service year. And this is an opportunity to really adapt this work and build it into existing programs within your local government organization, so that it's not only working at the community level, but is also serving your goals as well. And some of the ways that we'll measure our success in these areas is through volunteer logs. Again, our time cards, the fellows will be recording what services they're working on in terms of volunteering, and then our post assessments as well. And through our community engagement, again, here are our goals. We won't go too deep into them, but we'll just leave them up there so that you can see.
And part of the reason we're including these goals here, and we're certainly going to share out all these slides with you, is so you understand how the thing all sews up together. Why do we ask you guys for these surveys? Why are we, if you were a partner last year, maybe still harassing you to get the post-assessment? It's because this is how we report on these outcomes. This is how we deliver a program that has a lot of flexibility, but we also have requirements that we have to do, but they make sense in light of the overall service goals. Also want to mention real quickly on the technical side, my question window has disappeared into the ether. I don't know where it is, and I think I can find it at some point, but if you do have a question and it's not being answered, that's why. And in the meantime, if you can raise your hand, I'll unmute you and answer your question while I try and search through this crazy system for it.
So our final capacity measurement is member development. So again, we talk about how this is achieved, and this is through the training. So first, the members will start their year with their week-long orientation, and that's a really great opportunity for them to just get the high-level overview of a lot of what we're doing. And then from there, they'll be doing bi-weekly trainings throughout the service year. The first Thursday of the month, they'll be doing statewide webinars, and then the third, and our questions are back. And then the third Thursday of the month, they'll be working in their regional teams to get that much more content-specific and regional-specific trainings as well. And then finally, that training is going to be coming through implementing the Community Resilience Challenge. We have trainings coming through Daily Acts on all of this as well. And then the regional coordinators are serving as a mentor and coach for these fellows throughout the service year through their project work, but then also providing just general coaching and experience as these individuals are transferring to one of their first jobs out of college. And our time cards, performance assessments, and then the fellows will be doing their own personal assessments on their goals, are all different ways that we're going to be measuring our outcomes in terms of member development. And once again, just put the goals up for you. And we're trying to make it so that 70%, at least 34 of our 48 fellows, are seeing a really strong increase in professional engagement and service commitment and skills throughout the year.
All right, so I'm back up, and I'll be talking about some of the project partner roles and responsibilities. Go to the next slide. These are all the key things that are in your service agreements or your scopes of work with us, and so I hope that none of this is unfamiliar to you. It looks like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. I want to make sure that I'm in line. There we go. And so I'm just going to go through them sort of and connect them with what we just talked about in large part, and how these things all, again, sew up together. So the first pieces of responsibility is really supporting the fellow, the project, and those are really where your interests lie, and the program as a whole. And by being engaged with the experience of the fellow, by helping us to focus on the projects that we have and supporting our program compliance, we're basically all working together in collaboration to increase the value of national service to climate action work. And so if we have that big picture vision, hopefully it keeps us on target. Of course, we all have to do our jobs and take care of the things that are in front of us. And so let's talk about the details. So clearly, having a local government staff person or your organizational staff person be a point person for the fellow, providing the project supervision that lets them know what they should do, has a feedback loop on a regular basis. I think we identify at least an hour a week where they can check in with you so that they know what they're doing for you. Right? If you're not a local government itself, if you're an NGO, you know, that you have that project supervision going on, the person gets the feedback and the direction to be effective. These are mostly young emerging leaders. These are folks who don't come with, they're not engineers and they're not deep professional consultants. And so they need direction, but they can do exceptional work. And we've seen that exceptional work happen, but it takes some guidance. And part of that and then involves defining a project scope, identifying goals. Our pre-assessment and our gap assessment are meant to help bring that fellow into the work that they are doing for your community. So whether it's you as a local government or you as an NGO supporting a local government, helping to define the scope, getting those surveys done, the member is going to review those and then sit down with the local government point of contacts to firm those goals and scopes up. And that's how they really begin to understand their role in this process. And that's one of the main pieces that they do early on in that prep time. Supporting the implementation of the project, making sure that there's the appropriate authority and approvals to make sure this is going to go forward. Keeping us informed, particularly through your regional coordinators, of the development of those projects and challenges. We have a lot more support, sort of wraparound services for the fellows and even for you guys through the direct engagement of the regional coordinators, but we don't know what we don't know. And particularly when it comes to coaching young people into a role, it's great that we are here for the recruiting, but we're there for the duration. But you need to keep us informed. And so our regional coordinators are going to be checking in with you on a regular basis. And I hope that doesn't feel like an intrusion because they're there to figure out how they can better support the fellow in their role. And then assist with site visits. We need to, if requested from our funder, be able to visit fellows on site wherever they might be. And so making sure that we have that access. So yeah, next slide. You got to click onto the screen. There you go. Oops, one more. So a couple more pieces of that support are identifying one or more local government beneficiary for each 650 hours of service being contracted for. We have a target, as we showed you before, of serving 96 local governments. We have 48 members, that's 2 per member. So the way that we're putting that out and framing that is we're trying to line up 2 beneficiaries, 2 local governments per 650 hours. 650 hours is half of the 1,300 hours that a member is ideally serving you if they're working full-time on site. So if you're a local government, and I've sent you a survey recently saying, hey, can you help us fill in these additional beneficiaries? What I'm looking for is, are there, if you're a city, a county, association of governments, are there 2 staff people in 2 project elements or 2 agencies that the member will be working, the fellow will be working with over the course of the year that you can identify that we can track as being beneficiaries within your own institution? It's okay if one agency is the beneficiary multiple times, but we need to identify those different pathways. And the fellow is going to want to do that as they go through their gap assessment, look at where those roles are. Some of you have very clearly defined buckets that the projects are going to fall into. So there's a natural division between, say, planning and public works. There's different roles. Some of you have some questions, please ask. But it's really important that we get that information for each beneficiary involved. And each beneficiary has to go through the steps of doing the pre and the post survey and the gap assessment because that's how we're tracking the outcome. If you are an NGO who's hosting the project or a state agency who's hosting the project, we still need to identify the local government beneficiaries, the same elements and details. Along with that, we need the information about those local governments that determine whether they're eligible and high need. And so that's also that spreadsheet that I sent you all in the recent days and a reminder about is filling that information in. Do I know whether they have a CAP, sustainability staff, tracking mechanisms? Do I know the information about their high need status in terms of local government staffing, energy use? I can fill in the unemployment and the Cal EnviroScreen information, but the other two I often need help for. If you're not a local government yourself, you're going to be asking for that information from your partners. If you are a local government and you are having multiple projects in your site, I just need the information once. It's the same for the city of Santa Monica. The same data about whether you have a cap, whether you have a staff, and what your energy use data, that's all the same, and I can replicate it, but I do need to know the different project components. If you're not a local government and you're filling in that information, I need to know which local governments, and we're going to have to route them the surveys. And so hopefully that provides some clarification. And it's really, you guys got to help us figure it out. We can't track it down for you. And then obviously having those local government staff that I identified participate in the project interview to complete the gap assessments early on. And then supporting us on any project reporting, which may in some ways, that's kind of repetitive of what I just said, but we just want to make it clear, we can't show that we're doing good work just by saying that we did good work. We have to show, according to these performance measures, that we did what we said we're going to do. And you helping us to complete that is really about helping us to continue to provide this service year over year to communities in California. Just want to mention invoicing. It's a, obviously responsibility. We're going to be doing this monthly. If you were with us last year, it was a lot of ups and downs as we tried to treat it more like a consulting service with billable hours. You will be getting invoiced for a share of your total service commitment, your project contract. So if it's $23,400 for a full year fellow, it'll be 1/11 of that. Your deposits, if you paid them, will be credited against those first invoices, and it'll just roll out monthly. If you need it done quarterly, let us know. The assumption will be if we don't hear from you, it'll be monthly. Total project hours served are tracked, meaning we will know and can tell you how many hours towards that 1,300 hour goal are being accumulated, but the invoices are not going to be tied to them because, frankly, across 48 members and 47 projects and multiple beneficiaries, the effort involved in generating individual invoices with time kind of almost got me fired. So our accounting staff is going with this mode. We can give you the details that you need as you need them, ideally just quarterly. And I have a question here. May we pay in advance, says someone, maybe those wants to remain nameless. For example, I'd like to pay half out of this budget year. Absolutely, we're happy to take your money in advance. That is never a problem. And we would just credit you against the invoices. We would probably still generate the monthly invoice so you know how it's being spent down, or maybe we'd arrange something. Our accounting staff are flexible for sure. And part of this monthly invoicing is you all recognizing that our fellows are on the job for your project at all times, except when we're engaging them in non-project activities. That means that if they're there on site working for you and you're not giving them the work, we're still accumulating that service hours because we can't be responsible for that project scope that you've defined, and we've assigned them to that work. Now, we'll make it clear when they're not working for you guys, when they're doing prep hours, when they're doing training hours, when they're doing service days. But we want you to know that so that you're thinking, wow, this isn't like a billable contract, but this is somebody is on my site for a time period. So to wrap up the role you play, we want to talk about some of the ways you can provide a meaningful experience. For us, years in Climate Corps Bay Area, a year with CivicSpark, and just my experience working with sort of new emerging student, post-student folks in other programs, the more you give to them, the more they're going to give to you. The more they know they're part of your organization, part of something that has a purpose and a vision, part of helping make change in the community, the more they're going to invest and support, and you're going to see the benefits come back to you. So this is a self-interested role that you can play, but it's also about nurturing their development. So we're an AmeriCorps program. We're about both getting things done and member development. And so The more you can invest in that member development, I think the more you're going to see getting things done happen in your community. So providing regular check-ins, a regularly scheduled meeting with your fellow is one of the #1 ways, I would say, to make for good progress. If they know they have that regular attention, it's going to make a big difference. And I'll say, you're going to get some rock stars out there. You're going to get some people who are just jamming on their project. Don't drop the regular check-in, because those people, they're going to look to it as more of a larger scale investment. They're going to take your time to talk about their career. They're going to take your time to talk about the organization, and it can be a great growth opportunity. And maybe you can find some other things that they can do. So just because they're succeeding, don't abandon the regular check-ins. Appreciate them. They're working for virtually nothing. They're working for the experience. So sharing them with your staff, letting them know what they're doing, helping them to understand the value of their work is really important, so they know that they're actually making a contribution. Think about their professional development. I mean, that's what this whole slide is about. Introduce them to your peers. Let your colleagues know. Help them with informational interviews towards the end of the year. Recommend them. Let them know in advance you're willing to write them a letter of recommendation. These are all ways that you can help them use this experience to springboard to the next opportunity. And keep us informed. As I said, we don't know what we don't know, and we can't help if we don't know. Particularly if there's an HR issue, don't try and solve it yourself. They're our employees. We have to be involved if there's any real issues, and we can do a lot more coaching and support than most employers can do. So bring us into the loop, help us help you provide a meaningful experience for the fellows. We've got a question coming in. Are service hours outside of office hours treated differently? I'm thinking of evening hearings or community workshops. No, they're allowed to work outside 9 to 5. Some of you, a number of you have community outreach programs. They're going to happen in the evenings, on the weekends. You want to generally aim for a 40-hour work week, because burnout is something we want to avoid. So you don't want them working 9 to 5 and then go to a lot of evening and weekend activities without taking some time off the next week. But if you have a regular schedule that requires them to work on the weekends, make it clear during the hiring process. Tell them it's part of the job, and absolutely they're welcome to work during those other activities. We don't track time of day. I mean, we do in the time card, but we don't track it as like overtime or anything. It's just service hours. All right, so turning down to CivicSpark Support for Project Partners. This is what we can do for you.
Excellent. So in terms of support for project partners, the first really major support that you have is the regional coordinator. So the regional coordinator is an integral part of the team regionally and also at the team at the statewide level as well. So they're there to support the fellows, coordinate closely with LGC on any questions that the fellows are having regionally or that you're having, and really ensure that the program is implemented successfully. So in addition to being that you will be having those ongoing check-ins with your fellows, but outside of work, the more mentorship and really team builder at the local level and making sure that these fellows are feeling connected to CivicSpark as a program, that's the role that that regional coordinator is going to play. And then also being that regional liaison and representative. You'll have the area lead from the LGC office, but that regional coordinator is there in the region and will be meeting with you throughout the service year and really will be that ongoing support and that person to ask any questions that you have about CivicSpark, the projects that you're working on, the fellows, or really anything. And then they're also that LGC representative at the local level. They will be looking for opportunities to partner and really build out the program locally. So any thoughts that you have or really opportunities, keying the regional coordinator into that would be excellent. And then they also know about reporting and program compliance, and we'll be talking to you about it as well. They will be asking and making sure that the surveys are completed and really tracking that. So if you're missing anything, the regional coordinator will let you know and really keep an eye on that reporting and program compliance throughout the service year. And this is both the program level tracking and broader AmeriCorps compliance, and then any staffing issues as well. If you are seeing that you're having a trouble with one of your maybe not liking their quality of work, let the coordinator know as soon as the issues are coming up. We really want to make sure that we can really attack these issues when they first start, and make sure that the coordinator will know your fellows outside of work as well, and might be able to address these issues. So any case management issues when it comes to staff as well, the regional coordinator is definitely your point person for that. And again, we've talked about most of these pieces, so that regular engagement and just really the support for a positive experience. The fellows will be working a lot, and as Kif said, for not very much money. So being that team builder at the local level, they'll be doing a lot of the trainings and engagement and building that supportive experience. The fellows will have anywhere from 3 to 14 other fellows nearby, and these coordinators are the people who are looping in all the fellows together, providing that project support outside, so that volunteer component that we were talking about before. The coordinator will be doing a lot of the work and coordination with the fellows themselves on those community resilience challenge projects, and then also helping them with that transition of knowledge piece as well. So a lot of the broader program pieces that aren't necessarily directly related to the service work, it'll be the coordinator who's working on those with the fellow. And then finally is that coordinating that professional development through the training days, the service days, and then their broader professional development goal setting. And the fellows, you will be that day-to-day person in the office, so professional development goals will definitely be something that the fellows will want to talk to you about as well, but also knowing that they have that regional coordinator as a second person is good to know. And that regional liaison role is just tracking more broadly at the local level, and really working closely with the local governments and the regional. So if you have questions about the other work that's going on, different opportunities for fellows to work together, that coordinator will have that high-level view of what CivicSpark is doing in the region, and will definitely be able to share that information with you. And then just tracking the projects throughout the year, the coordinator will be checking in and hearing how things are going. Are you on track to meet the goals? And how is the fellow doing? And just have that much higher level look at the work that's going on. And then finally, it's that reporting and program compliance piece, really understanding what is required for accurate and timely AmeriCorps reporting. AmeriCorps, there are a lot of different moving pieces in terms of compliance. And the coordinator, they've gone through training, and then they're in very constant communication with the staff at LGC. So if you have any questions at all about compliance, don't hesitate to reach out to them. And they also won't hesitate to reach out to you if there are any gaps whatsoever. So all of the documentation in time cards, reporting, service delivery, volunteer engagement, case management, all of that communication can come through the regional coordinators. And the regional coordinator support, they are checking in, as I said, with the fellows weekly, and coordinating all of the local trainings and service activities. And there are a number of ways that they can support success with the fellows, and then throughout the projects in general. So the first is the project support. So while the fellow will be in your office working on the projects, the coordinator is there to really help them develop timeline, scope of work, and really set realistic goals. As we said, these coordinators are people with extensive project management background, so they're providing training on what it takes to create a substantial work plan. How do you keep on your goals over time? So although that you might not be doing this with your fellow, or you may be doing it as well, the coordinator is also that support there who's going to be supporting the fellows from a much more project management standpoint and helping them, not the coordinators themselves won't be doing the project managing, but setting the fellows up with the tools they need to be successful project managers throughout the year. And then coaching the fellows on their professional development needs, and really seeing if there are any things that you think that the fellows really need to be working on, areas that you think they could use some training in or development in, letting the coordinator know. At least once a month, the coordinator will be doing regional trainings really targeted at professional development and other trainings as well. So if you see opportunities for the coordinator to jump in and take on a training and really work with the fellow on a particular aspect of professional development, certainly pass that information along. That's something that they'll really love to hear, because that can help them direct their trainings and do it more effectively. So those are the really high-level project supports the coordinators will do, and then employment support as well. So again, any issues that come up is really, as soon as possible, we need to know. Documents and whenever we have a corrective issue, documentation from the very beginning is very, very important, and that really helps us establish our corrective action plans. So talking to the coordinator, they can pass on any information to the staff at LGC if it's a high-level issue. We need to make sure that we are having constant communication with the fellows and the coordinators to make sure that these issues aren't getting dropped. If we can really hit them right from the beginning, that'll really help with our compliance. And also, if anything happens and a fellow does need to be released, having that documentation from the very beginning will be very, very important. And as I'm sure you've gathered, we don't know what you need if you don't tell us. So being in constant contact with your area lead and your regional coordinator is very important. And we have another question coming in.
Yeah, Kevin is asking, will partner cities need to produce any documents at the end of service to verify results of this fellow service? No, not exactly. No, not functionally. So the end of service includes two things that you'll be involved in. The post-assessment survey, which will send out a request, and it represents the goals that were finalized during the gap assessment to you, and says, did we meet the goals? That's our primary outcome measure. So that's really what we need to get in to make sure we say the local government's got the services that we provided. That being said, there's two other things. There's the transitional activities. So during the gap assessment, you'll talk with your fellow about, at the end of this project, what do we want to do to celebrate, memorialize, hand off the outcomes. So thinking about that as an outcome or a deliverable is reasonable. The other thing that we do is we collect products. So if you've done something neat, useful, interesting, shareable for other local governments or future CivicSpark fellows to work on, we'd love to get it. We archived a whole bunch of deliverables last year, some of which we were given permission to share with OPR and which they're, I believe, already posting on their website. So we're trying to create a mechanism by which we can share outcomes with others. It's not a requirement that you share those deliverables, so certainly if there's anything proprietary, we don't want it, but a lot of folks are doing some really good work and we'd love to be able to share it with folks. Next question, are members trained in office etiquette? Great question. We can do a little bit, we can't do it all. We make sure that we talk about it a lot during orientation. We talk about it, it's one of the things that the regional coordinators are going to be looking for. It's something we screened as much as we could during the application and interview process to look for some professionalism qualities. It's something you'll keep an eye on. I have to say, folks coming out of college in particular, and the bulk of our demographic is recent college grads, can use a lot of coaching in office etiquette. Tell them what your expectations are. Tell them what the norm is. We'll talk about basic expectations as far as dress code, generally office professional, showing up punctually, taking notes, tone and voice in emails and verbal communications. But there's culture that you can help with them on. And as we talk about, I think the site supervisor or the site orientation, there is some communication about that. So don't be shy about saying what it's like to work in your office and how it might be. Certainly in the interview, it's not a problem either to say, this is this kind of office, this is not that kind of office.
Great. So moving on to additional resources that you have, the regional partners. So we talked a little bit about these regional partners before, but they are really the hub for a lot of our work regionally for CivicSpark. So their two main roles are assisting with program growth and supporting fellows. On the program growth side, they're looking for and identifying project interest. So where can we grow? Where can we find really new areas to explore in terms of our projects? And then really broadcasting this program to a whole network of incoming fellows. So a lot of the recruitment and advertising for the program regionally is going to be done through our regional partners. And their job is to share the successes. Before we had a question about some of the sharing and newsletters that go out. all of our fellows work on what's called great stories. So one of their reporting mechanisms is that they will be every month writing a story about their service. And that will go in our newsletters and our files. But then also, if you want to send anything out, feel free to include those stories in your newsletters for your program, and our regional partners will do the same. They will share these successes more broadly at the regional level to really build the identity and build the strength of CivicSpark within their region. And then supporting fellows, there are a number of roles that they play at the regional level. First is providing a regional meeting place for meetings and trainings. We've talked about these trainings that the fellows do by every 2 weeks, and the regional partner will provide the space for a lot of those trainings so that all of the fellows, no matter how spread out they are amongst the region, can get together a couple of times a month to interact, train together, and really build out that cohort and community. And then also be able to provide a regional context and background at the start of the project. Not all of these fellows are coming from these regions. So being able to better understand the community, the region, the politics, the issues, the regional partner really knows the area more broadly and can communicate a lot of that information to the fellows as well. So providing that context will be really, really important right at the beginning of the year, and that's something that you can certainly provide to your fellows as well. As Kif said, we'll be talking a little bit more about that site orientation and making sure that the fellows know what it's like to work in an area that is different from their hometown or different from where they've worked before is very important. And then finally, the regional partner is there to provide a network for career opportunities. Sharing the candidates amongst, at the end of the service year, amongst potential job opportunities, just providing that opportunity to network and get to speak with other climate professionals and allow these fellows to build their professional network and then also ultimately find employment after the CivicSpark service year. So those are all the roles that the regional partner will play. Certainly overlap with some of the roles that you play, but thinking that they really take these issues in a much more regional context. And then you have the statewide support staff. So you have the CivicSpark staff here, and we will really be coordinating a lot of logistics throughout the year. So the statewide trainings, communication, network development, and then really all of the fiscal and administrative details as well. And then finally, we've spoken about these area lead positions, and this is going to be your opportunity to talk with this area lead and really keep in touch with the LGC staff. We'll be setting up monthly check-ins with you, and this will really be the opportunity to share any thoughts that you have about the year. If there are issues, concerns, or any questions that maybe you have not addressed yet with your regional coordinator, or things need to be elevated to the statewide staff. So again, another opportunity to just have ongoing communication with the staff at LGC. You have the Governor's Office of Planning and Research as well, and they are both tracking outcomes and sharing information through CivicSpark. As Kif said, they're building out the presence of CivicSpark on their website. At the end of last year, all of our fellows put together capstone posters, and they've been putting those out, advertising the great work the fellows have done, have served as a resource to network and really connect the fellows to job placements after the service year, but then also provide additional technical support as well. They've been very integral in planning these trainings and being involved with a lot of the ongoing support for the fellows throughout the year. So again, having that connection directly to the state and through the governor's office has been a really wonderful resource for the fellows. And then other project partners. You all are a really great network for each other and for LGC as well. And we really want to share project resources, deliverables, and templates across fellows and across service years. As we were saying, we're collecting all of these deliverables at the end of the year, and that's a really great opportunity to see what work has been done and connect fellows to previous folks who have worked on these projects, see what some of the deliverables have looked like, but then also by connecting fellows across projects and across regions, people who are working on similar projects can share best practices, talk with each other, and really make sure that resources are shared more broadly as well. So if you really think that you might be doing something that someone else has done before or someone else might be interested in doing, please let us know, and we'd be more than happy to connect you with other project partners or share your resources or find out if someone else is a resource that you might need as well. So again, just sharing your interests and sharing your needs with us will really help match you up with other folks who are working on the same work as you.
So turning to next steps, thank you guys for your patience with our technical issues, and we're winding down now, and certainly as folks continue to have questions, we're happy to answer them. But before the start of service, which is just around the corner, we really want to make sure we get as much of that beneficiary information completed, and we complete those pre-service climate capacity assessments. A number of you have been sending them in. I've been getting them as, here and there. A lot of them are still missing. So please, if you need one more for your region or for your project, or if you still have questions about it, let me know. Same thing on the beneficiary information. I sent out those spreadsheets attached to those emails to try and give you at least a framework for what I know so far. But I'm happy to work with you to make sure we get in the information we need, because when they come on site, your fellows are going to be asking, like, okay, can I get the pre-capacity assessment because I want to start my gap assessment. We want to knock that out on our dime, so to speak, during their prep time, and so give them that as a resource to get going with their project. During the first days you have your fellow on site, good idea to do a fellow orientation, and we sent you a checklist and sample agenda for that, and we'll go over that in a second. Develop your scope of work for the fellow and set up your supervisory check-in. So figure out what the year is going to look like. Start to talk with them about their experience and start to think about the placement of them within your organization. Introduce them to your organization and your other colleagues. Sometimes what happens is you know what they're doing, you know why they're there, but some of your other colleagues may know nothing about it. So it's helpful to introduce them to the organization as much as you introduce the organization to them. And then in those first weeks, help them get the gap assessment done. We don't want to be chasing those down midway into the year. And it's going to help them feel like they know, the regional coordinator knows, and the area leads know what this project is focused on, and that we're all headed in the same direction. So just to go over the last bit here, the site orientation pre-checklist. This was just some questions we sent out in that document for you to think about. Have you made the space available and thought through the placement? This person's going to be with you for, in many cases, in most cases, a year almost. So, has the workspace been set up? Have you thought about the work scope? Do you have any understanding of what benefits, if any, the member might need to use or be able to use? Transportation is a key one. Sometimes you have an idea that the fellow might work on site using pool vehicles to do project work, but because they're our employee, they're kind of in this limbo status, they may not have access, or you just may need to work through your legal or HR folks to figure that out. Do you have commute benefits that you'd like to extend to these folks? That certainly would be wonderful. See if that's an option. Have you briefed your other folks in your organization about what CivicSpark is and what they can be doing and what they can't be doing? They're not there for just anything for the organization. And setting up regular check-ins, identifying key dates or times for events that might come up in the evenings or off-site activities, and then any important resources they're going to want for the project kind of on hand. Once they actually, kind of come for the site orientation, a couple items that you could go over during that first day. And again, these are just suggestions, and we're trying to be proactive and helpful. We're not assuming that you're not thinking about these things, that you haven't hired people in the past. We're just doing our best as a program to support you in this onboarding of our fellows. So do they have the logins they need? Have you gone over expectations, both office etiquette, daily and performance expectations? Have they met with the various heads of the department? Do they know where their desk is? Have you shared the scope? Do they have a badge? It'd be unfortunate if they're expecting to work and they can't get in the building. Doing introductions and any kind of on-site procedures or emergency action plans. Again, these are pretty normal for startup of an organization, startup of a hiring position, but we're trying to be helpful in thinking about it for our fellows. So at this point, we've gotten through all the orientation content. Love to answer any questions that you all might have, either by raising your hand or texting it in the question area. Really appreciate your patience with our technical issues. And we're really excited about this coming year and hope you are as well. So I will keep looking here to see if anybody has any specific questions. Meanwhile, I'll mention that we will send these out to all attendees, the slides, so you have them on hand. You can certainly always ask questions of your area lead or your regional coordinator. If you're not sure who that is, if you haven't met that person yet, let us know. We can introduce you to them. For those folks in the North Bay area who are on the call, you may not know exactly who you are, but certainly the Napa-Sonoma folks. I think Piedmont and is also going to be in that group. I believe our new Encore fellow, Cyrus Keller, is coming on board this week, so he'll start kind of bringing himself into the conversation shortly. So if there's no questions, we can adjourn for the day. And again, thank you. We're really excited about this process and look forward to the year. Oh, we do have a question. I want to confirm that the city is responsible for incidental expenses, travel, parking, and such. Incidental expenses, we have in our agreements with you coverage up to a certain amount for work-related travel. Anything above and beyond that is the responsibility of the host. So if there's a parking cost that is beyond, I guess, normal commute costs, I wouldn't assume that you would have to pay for their parking. That's a cost that they're going to have if you have some support for it. But if there's other incidental project-related costs, those are your responsibility, and happy to answer further questions on that if needed. So we're going to probably turn this off because clearly things are going awry with my screen again. So thank